So there's a new pope. Kind of exciting, right? Regardless of your particular religious affiliation, and especially exciting for Americans. And I don't know if you all knew this or not, but I am an American. The first American pope, like ever. Robert Prevost is his name, or was his name. I guess now his name is Leo the 14th. But Robert Prevost is the name he was born with. And I don't think he should be allowed to change it. I think once you get your name when you're born, you should be forced to keep it. Or at least I'm told that's how things should be by certain politicians in my country. But nevertheless, I don't think we're going to be dead naming the new pope anytime soon. He was born Robert Prevost. That was his name until earlier today. And now he shall be known as Pope Leo the 14th. He's from Chicago, the second city pope. Although apparently he has spent most of his life doing missionary work around the world. He did a lot of work, spent a lot of time in Peru. That's sort of where his home was for many, many years. And that's kind of where I guess he built up his resume as a bishop, as a cardinal, however that works. And it's always interesting whenever there's a new pope for me, because it's kind of something that I feel like I shouldn't have to care about, but yet also I recognize that I do kind of have to care about it, because even though I'm not a Catholic, the Pope is an influential figure around the world. We can argue whether or not the Pope should be as influential as the Pope is a separate discussion, but the Pope is a very influential figure, and it matters who the Pope is. And if you care about things, as I do, like progress and social justice and human rights, it's always kind of nice to have a pope who at least kind of gives a shit about that sort of thing. And early indications are that the new pope, Leo the 14th, does care about those things. In fact, his choice of regnal name, Leo the 14th, is being taken by a lot of people as a sign that he intends to be a reformer and continue to liberalize the church and sort of pull it into the modern era, because the previous Pope Leo, who was Pope in the early 20th century, I think, he was also viewed as a reformer. He was also viewed as a modernizer. He was also someone who cared about workers' rights, labor rights, things like that. So the fact that the new Pope chose that as his name, because there have been so many popes with so many names, there's like a code. So when a new pope chooses a name, you can sort of look at the other popes who have had that name and be like, okay, I see where he's going. Except for the previous pope, Francis. But he was the first person to choose Francis as a papal name. But he chose it in honor of St. Francis of Assisi. And so they can sort of draw some conclusions from that. But anyway, there's a new pope. As a non-Catholic, and not only am I not a Catholic, I'm an atheist. So, as an atheist, I am as far from Catholics and as far from this new pope, theologically speaking, as you can possibly be. The only people who have greater theological differences with Catholics than atheists are other Catholics. But even with all of those theological differences aside, even with all of the facts that the Pope is the leader of a Christian church and I am about as non-Christian as you can get, my family wasn't even Catholic. I come from a family where, historically speaking, we have been mostly Methodists. Coincidentally, mostly Methodists, also the name of my college improv group. Never sold a single ticket. Anyway, it's also interesting for another reason, and it's kind of weird for another reason. This is this is the fourth pope of my lifetime and the third conclave of my lifetime. The third time I've actually seen the selection of a new pope. And every time that happens, it's always a little weird because it's not exactly my thing. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not a believer, but also you sort of feel like you have to pay attention because the pope is a world leader and the pope is influential. But this time, there's another layer to it. In his opening statement, in his first sort of proclamation to the world as Pope, here's a little bit of what Robert Prevost, Pope Leo XIV, said, and this is a translation. He spoke in Italian and Spanish, because I guess his native language of English isn't good enough for him. But he gave the speech in Italian and Spanish, and this is from a translation from the BBC's website with an article that has the headline, "Peace be with you all," Pope Leo XIV says in his first speech. And here's a little bit from that opening speech. "Peace be with you. Dearest brothers and sisters, this was the first greeting of the risen Christ, the Good Shepherd who gave his life for the flock of God. I too would like this greeting of peace to enter your hearts, to reach your families, and all people, wherever they are, and all the peoples, and all the earth. Peace be with you. This is the peace of the risen Christ, a disarming and humble and preserving peace. It comes from God, God who loves all of us without any limits or conditions. Let us keep in our ears the weak but always brave voice of Pope Francis, who blessed Rome, the Pope who blessed Rome and the world that day on the morning of Easter. Allow me to continue that same blessing. God loves us, all of us. Evil will not prevail." And it's just kind of a funny feeling to hear the new Pope standing on the balcony there talking to that throng of thousands and thousands of people. And he says, evil will not prevail. And the first thought I have is, oh shit, I wonder if he's talking about us. When the Pope says, evil will not prevail, and your first reaction is to feel kind of called out by it, that's not a good sign for where your country is going. And obviously, I don't feel personally called out by it, but as an American looking at the state of affairs in the United States, the people who are in charge at the moment, I felt kind of like, oh, I wonder if he's talking to us, especially since, he is an American himself. I wonder if he was talking to us when he says, evil will not prevail. Now, obviously, even if that was in his head, even if he's thinking, I'm referring to Trump when I say this, he's not referring just to Trump. He's not referring just to J.D. Vance, who murdered the previous pope, and I'm sure there will be a reckoning for that at some point. He's speaking about, a general principle, a general idea in Christianity and in most religions. Good will triumph over evil. And even if he is referring to actual things happening in the world right now, unfortunately, as shitty as things are here in the United States at the moment, we do not have a monopoly on shittiness. There are terrible things happening all over the world. A lot of it is also kind of our fault, or at least we're enabling it, but it's not just us. Things are shitty in a lot of different places. There are a lot of people making life miserable for a lot of people all over the world. So he could be referring to all of that. But if he is referring, at least in part, to my country and to how we're fucking people's shit up and fucking our own shit up. And it's just, I'm glad that he said it. I'm glad that the Pope is up there saying, hey, evil will not prevail. Whether or not he meant it as a reference to my country and the people who are committing evil right now using my government and committing evil in the name of my country, whether he meant that or not, I'm still glad that he said it. I don't know. There is, because he is perceived, at least at this early stage, as someone in the mold of Pope Francis, as someone who was apparently sort of viewed as like Pope Francis's unofficial heir apparent, because they do share so much in common in terms of their view of the church and their worldview and their priorities and stuff. It's, I'm sure there was a lot more going on in his selection than the Cardinals getting together and saying, let's stick it to Trump, right? I'm sure they had other things on their mind. But it is also kind of tempting and kind of amusing and sort of appealing to imagine that that was at least part of what was going on in the conclave. That the Cardinals got together and they said, we're going to pick a new pope. And since we've got this opportunity right now with everything else that's going on in the world, let's pick a pope. And this time, fellas, let's really break this one off in Trump's ass. Like, I don't think they said that. And clearly the Catholic Church has a ton of problems of its own, and they have a lot of stuff for them to worry about beyond, sending a symbolic middle finger to our dipshit fascist president. But it's nice to have it all the same. It's nice to at least be able to indulge in the fantasy of, oh, how nice, the historically pretty fucked up and evil Catholic Church. Like, even the Catholic Church, one of the most long-standing evil institutions that has ever existed, looks toward the United States, looks at Donald Trump and says, oh, fuck that. No, fuck that guy. Again, this is just my speculation. I have no idea if any of this is actually happening at all, but these are the thoughts I had. This is my reaction to the election of the new Pope. It's kind of exciting, even though I'm not a Catholic, just as an American, first American Pope. I hope he does okay. I hope he's a good Pope. I hope he's at least good for a Pope. Like the last one, Francis. Francis was good for a Pope. A lot of people, I think, give Francis a little too much credit because he was taking over for the previous Pope, who just gave off just a straight evil vibe. Like, you ever see the movie The Two Popes? I watched that just recently. There's a movie called The Two Popes. It's on Netflix. It was nominated for a couple of Oscars about 10 years ago, and it stars Jonathan Pryce as Pope Francis, or as Cardinal Bergoglio, who became Pope Francis, and it stars Anthony Hopkins as Pope Benedict XVI, the previous Pope before Francis. And you watch the movie, and it's a pretty good movie. It has some funny bits, it has some heartfelt bits, the performances are great. Anthony Hopkins, obviously, is fantastic. Jonathan Pryce, obviously, is fantastic. It's kind of Oscar baity, but it's fine, it's good, But you watch that movie, and there are these two actors playing these two real guys, the two, at the time, the two most recent popes. And then at the end, they splice in some actual archival footage of the real popes. So you see this like news footage of Pope Francis getting out of the papal helicopter. I wonder, does it say Pope on the side of it? But anyway, you see Pope Francis like coming out of his papal helicopter, like the real Pope Francis, and he was a pleasant looking guy. Like Jonathan Pryce looks a lot like he looked, and that's one of the main reasons why he was cast. And Pope Francis seemed like a jovial, friendly, gentle, kind sort of guy. And then the camera pans over, and here comes Pope Emeritus at the time, Benedict, sort of sliding up like fucking Nosferatu, like old school Count Orlok, fucking Max Shrek Nosferatu, like just kind of just tiptoeing up, looking like the most evil motherfucker who has ever lived. Like, here's Pope Francis. Ah, my friend, Pope Benedict, how are you? And here comes Pope Benedict, like, he's almost doing this. You know what I mean? Just and it's like, oh shit, I didn't realize. I thought Anthony Hopkins, kind of looked like him, but I didn't realize how Anthony Hopkins didn't play him as a fucking actual demon. Which, it's like, what the fuck? How they chose the most evil looking motherfucker they had for the Pope. But anyway, the new guy seems nice. Seems good. Hopefully he'll be good for a Pope, like Francis was. Francis was sort of above the bare minimum in terms of like human rights. Like Francis was, oh, he's nice to gay people. Oh, he's not openly hostile to gay people or trans people. Oh, he's given women a little bit more influence, a little bit more power in the church. They still can't be priests. Fuck that. But he's loosened a few things. He's allowed them more of a voice. He's been a little bit more, accepting and inclusive. So for a Pope, Francis was pretty good. Like, let's not get carried away. But for a Pope, Francis was pretty good. Francis was great for a Pope, considering how fucking awful most of the popes have been. So hopefully Pope Leo will be in the Francis mold, and he'll be good for a Pope. Maybe he'll even be good enough that he'll scrape the very bottom of good for just a regular person. That would be nice. I'm not expecting that because, again, Catholic Church, one of the most evil institutions that's ever existed, but I'm kind of, I'm hopeful. So, yeah, new Pope. Fingers crossed. Will the new Pope be a dope? Nope. I hope. If not, I guess we'll have to cope. Some people will mope. But, when you scope out a new Pope, it's a slippery slope. Because popes being a dope is kind of a trope. I wonder. They say that nuns, when a woman becomes a nun, it's like she's marrying Christ. Does there have to be a ceremony, or do they ever elope? We're all just, with the new Pope. We're just groping for hope. Should I say grope in relation to the Pope? I need to be careful about that. Because if you say grope and then you also say Pope, people might consider that to be bad taste. It's a slippery slope. You're really walking a tightrope. Okay, I'm done.